Hello and welcome to today's Coffee with Craig. I am Craig, of course. We want to thank you for tuning in, joining us, to talk about, the Second Amendment, firearms, as it relates to politics, culture, sports, you name it. So before we get started, do me a quick favor. Go ahead and like and share this video so everyone of your friends who are following you here on Facebook or on YouTube can join into the conversation. So let's get started. Just recently, passed the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre. And it just seems like, every year this comes up. It just seems like reporters and the media just seem insistent on the idea that we need to come up with some new sort of gun law, gun restriction, some way in which to take away people's rights in order to make people actually be safer, in order to prevent these tragedies from happening. Now, you and I know we could look at instance after instance that happened before Sandy Hook and after Sandy Hook and realize that that especially in areas where in communities where the gun laws were super strict, these things still happened because none of the laws that are either on the books or none of the laws that have been proposed would have actually kept any of these massacres from happening. So when the White House press secretary, Ms. Huckabee, was questioned on this by a reporter during a White House briefing, she had an interesting response, and I thought it was one that was worth sharing with you in case you didn't have a chance to see it. So check it out here. We'll talk about it on the flip side.
Sarah, today is the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre in which so many children were killed. That, of course, as a tragedy, was eclipsed by what happened in Las Vegas, which is now the most tragic and mass shooting on U.S. soil. Since that time, what has President Trump done to try to protect the American people against a similar type of massacre? Does he think anything's been done? What is the administration trying to do? Is there anything at the executive level that he thinks needs to be undertaken?
Look, I think that there are a number of different ways that we look to protect our citizens every single day. One of the areas that the president has been outspoken about, not necessarily to those two instances, but just more broadly speaking in terms of national security and protecting individuals, certainly through border security, stronger vetting processes, and looking at whether or not there are other regulations that we could put in place that would
but these were
offer
domestic
protection.
Shooters. These weren't people who entered the United States.
Right, and I said
instance.
I'm speaking more broadly in terms of national security as a whole. And look, this is a president who knows that his #1 responsibility is to look for ways to protect American citizens, and we try to do that every single day. And whether or not there's a regulation that could be put in place or not that could have prevented those things, frankly, I'm not aware of what that would be, but we want to look for every opportunity, every way possible that we can to protect American lives, and we're going to continue doing that.
So is it correct to say that the administration is looking at how to prevent these kind of mass shootings by domestic shooters on U.S. soil?
I know that's something that absolutely. I know that's something that the Department of Homeland Security looks at and talks about and works on every single day. I don't think there's a person in this country that wouldn't like us to find ways to protect people, and we're certainly very supportive of that.
But no one issue that the president has highlighted that says he wants to make a priority.
I don't think there's any one thing
forward.
that you could do that could have prevented either one of those instances, those horrible, horrible tragedies.
But there were prescriptions given very quickly just the other day for this failed terrorist attack, which is why in these cases, I mean, this is the worst shooting on U.S. soil on President Trump's watch. I understand that, and that's why I also think that you have to take these matters obviously very seriously. But if you could name a single thing that would have prevented both of these, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know what that would look like. But we're looking every single day at how you can protect American lives, how we can best protect American citizens. In terms of New York, we know for a fact this individual came through chain migration system. This is something the president has been outspokenly against and something that he wants to stop.
and that individual wouldn't have been here in order to commit that crime if that wasn't in place. So that's a fact that we do know.
Right. The assault weapons ban, any kind of regulation, any kind of mental health concerns. The president has specifically mentioned that as a possibility, as a factor.
I know that they're looking at some of the mental health issues. It's something the president has raised before, but in terms of a specific policy that we're moving forward with that would have prevented that, I'm not aware of what that would be.
So you notice how dismissive the reporter was of the fact that the White House is actually looking at instances, well, how do we stop the people? How do we deal with and address the people? Because in the end, violence is a people issue. It's not a gun issue. It's not a car issue. It's not a refrigerator issue. It's a people issue. How do we address the evil in people's hearts? If someone wants to bad enough, they will seek to, if they want to inflict harm bad enough, they'll find a way to be able to do it. What Sandra Huckabee is talking about here is actually looking at, well, if you can come up with what regulation would have prevented these things, I would like you to share that with me, because I don't know what of anything that's been proposed. What? Now we've got the bump stock ban. Okay, so the bump stock ban, which we all know, at least all of the ones that have been proposed thus far, basically ban anything that could potentially increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle, including fingers, including belt loops, including scrunchies and rubber bands, aftermarket triggers. I mean, you name it, it would wind up banning it. Why? Because and in the end, none of it would work. And yet, and still, the proposal once again is, well, we need to find a way to take away people's rights. You know, just on a side note, I have to say, you know, I wasn't the biggest fan of Miss Huckabee's when she first started doing the press conferences, but I have to say, she has truly come into her own. I love the way that she stands up to the reporters, the way in which she makes sure that that the point is made, that she doesn't let folks, in this particular case, someone who's seeking nothing more than to say, are you proposing anything anti-gun? Is there any regulations? There's got to be some anti-gun regulations out there that the White House can be pushing so that we can help stop these tragedies. You've got to be pushing some anti-gun rhetoric, some anti-gun policies. And Sandra Huckabee's like, well, no, these are the things that we're looking at, and I don't know what gun policies you're thinking of that would have actually stopped any of these massacres from happening. You take Tehama County, which occurred in probably one of the most highly regulated states in the country. Heck, Sandy Hook also took place in one of the most highly regulated states in the country. And yet and still the tragedies happened. Because once again, their whole goal is they don't want to be safe, they want to feel safe. And their issue is that anyone, even law-abiding citizens who may want to have a gun, who may want to be able to arm themselves in self-defense, simply wanting or desiring a firearm is enough to make you evil, therefore you should not have a gun. The only people they want to have guns are people that don't want to have guns. And law enforcement. But then again, you have some factions of the left who would like to see law enforcement disarmed. But that's a whole nother story. So once again, you know, I think this is just another good example of the White House, I think, standing up to a media that clearly has a political agenda. And in this case, the political agenda is disarming law-abiding citizens. And so far, from what I can tell from this White House, they will have none of that. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos and invite people to both our YouTube channel and to our Facebook page. The Firearms Policy Coalition is the home in the fight for civil rights, because we realize we've got to use them or we're going to lose them. You guys take care. We'll talk to you again later.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.